Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. How about that catchy music? Did that psych you up? Did that get you ready for some comics discussion, some comics talk? I sure hope so. We're going to have a good one. Welcome to the show. My name is Chris. This is the weekly Spinnerack, where we are going to talk about the latest comics of the week, as well as the latest comics news of the week. If by any chance I get through that in a reasonable amount of time, we'll do some drawing today. Let's do some shout outs to some folks that are already here. So, hello. Oh, great intro. Well, thank you. I'm just going to fly through, just giving some shout outs to some of the folks that are here at the beginning. Love what you did with the hands. Thank you. Yes, comics. Nice Mignola shirt. I like it. Lovely, lovely. Oh, wait, did I just say, hey, great. Love it when you hear Jean. That's my sister, so that's always fun to have her here. Been a while since you've been here. Good. Hello. Not trying to pick favorites, just flying through, just giving a bunch of shout outs. It's going a little faster than I expected, but that's good. That's good. All right. Hello. Trying to be fair with that. Thank you all for joining me. It's going to be a good one. In fact, there's so many of you that were saying such nice things that boom, we'll give you a double salute. You've earned it. I think that's fair. Trying a few different things here with the show. I've got a different camera that I'm using for this. I hope that it's giving a slightly better resolution than what I usually do, but we'll see. Just something I want to try this week. And then I do have a nice high def camera for showing the comic books and stuff like that when we get to the reviews. So that'll be exciting to give it a shot. Just want to try to, always make the show better. Oh, and by the way, my other show, Comic Tropes, I am working very hard on it with the editing. I'm pretty close to having that one wrapped up. So just letting you know that, that will be up pretty soon. Haven't quite finished it yet. The one thing that's sort of been slowing me down is just lately, and it's not every day, but I've been getting some lower back pain, like some real stiffness, so that if I'm sitting here editing, it can get like really, really kinked up, really, really cramped up. And so I can't sort of sit for these marathon editing sessions that I used to, maybe when I was younger or something. So it's slowing me down a little bit, but it's whatever. Let's bring up, no, I don't think it's connected to anything. I don't know. I'm trying to work my core a little bit more because I'm dealing with this pain. I'm thinking that just maybe as I'm getting older or something like that, or maybe, I just haven't been using it quite as much, that I'm probably using some back muscles to compensate. So just trying to deal with it. It's a little frustrating. My back went out Friday. Oh, yikes. Hasn't quite gone out on me. At the same time, sometimes I'll come home from work, lay down on the bed for a minute, like just sort of veg out for a moment or two and relax. And then I have the hardest time physically, like getting back up. It's very frustrating, very frustrating. Hey, that's a great point. I did want to mention that. So Jim sort of beat me to it, but today would have been Jack Kirby's birthday. I think comics in general owes a huge debt to the king. He gets a little bit of a mention in my latest Comic Tropes episode that I'm working on still. He's not the biggest part of it, but he does factor in a little bit. Just an amazing creator. Created so many different wonderful things for us. Gave us romance comics, among other things. Co-created / mostly created a huge swath of our Marvel superheroes, and then gave DC a tremendous shot in the arm with all of his new God stuff, Dark Side and such. Anyway, shout out to No One and Jim's variant cover. Lovely. Let's see. Mom said she's going to watch tonight. All right. So normally this is the part where I just, go into explicit graphic detail on all sorts of jokes that are offensive, mostly like strong sexual content, really would turn anyone's ears into withering husks. But I'm going to not do that tonight, just in case my mother's watching. Anyway, I'm just kidding around. All right, EJ, absolutely. Hail to the king. EJ, there's a small chance I might get to visit Taiwan like in a year. I know you were just talking about a recent visit back there for yourself. I've got a friend who's getting married, and his wife's whole family is from Taiwan. They live there. So there's a chance we do the wedding over there, in which case we would be invited. So we'll see. Yes, the classic purple green villain colors. I know. All right. Marvin, just giving you a shout out. Love having you here. Marvin does a great job helping moderate the Comic Tropes Discord. So I'm always happy to have you here. This has taken long enough. Let's get into the news of the week. So look at that beautiful PowerPoint display, as professional as a show could possibly be. We'll get into it. Before I really get into the news, I got some personal news. Comic Tropes, I'll call it main channel, my other channel, whatever you want to call it. It's actually up for 2 awards. There's something called the Comic Book Community Awards every year, the CBC Awards. There's the website right there, cbcawards.org. And I was nominated in 2 categories that you can actually vote in. Voting is open through November 18th. There's also about 24 other categories. But I would certainly appreciate your vote. I think it would be really cool to have a vote. One is for favorite. By the way, they're all comic book related channels, but one is for favorite comics channel over 5,000 subscribers. So I'm in there. And then the other is called their Lifetime Achievement Award, a channel that's been going for over 3 years, and I'm nominated there. So that's kind of cool. And I see a bunch of people saying they already voted. Well, that's really nice. As far as I know, I can't think of having won any awards. So yeah, this is stuff that the actual audience will vote on. And so it isn't always the size of your channel. Sometimes it's more the engagement that you have. But I wanted to mention that. I was kind of excited just to be nominated. And because, for instance, Lifetime Achievement, I really respect Cartoonist Kayfabe. I've been shouting them out since it began. But anyway, we'll see what happens. You don't have to vote in every category, but I would, encourage you to vote in every category in which you are familiar with some of the contestants. Moving on, let's talk about what kind of stuff happened in comics this week. Oh, hey, Kyle, lovely to have you here, man. I definitely have the latest issue of No One to talk about today, so we'll get to that. We're going to do comic reviews after we get through the news, but an early hint, folks, I actually like No One, Kyle's book. So we'll get there. And thank you for the kind words. Where did I just put my document? There it is. Marv Wolfman is going to return to Blade, which I thought was kind of cool. I got to see Marv recently at a local smaller comic convention this summer and had him sign some of my old comics. But one of the things people don't always remember him for, but should, was, he actually got his start in Tomb of Dracula. Anyway, so Marvel's going to publish one of their What If Dark books, which is basically What If, and What If is always kind of dark, so I don't know that it needed the extra branding with dark, but hey, I guess I'm just being overly critical with that. Anyway, that's in November 8th. They're going to have this issue, and it's going to be written by Blade's co-creator, Marv Wolfman, and art by David Cutler. One of the books he's done with Marvel is called Darkhold, so definitely in that same vein, Marvel's supernatural stuff. I hope it's good. The story's going to involve Dracula flat out turning Blade into a vampire. What would happen after that? I don't know. Here's a quote from Marv that I thought I'd include. Yeah, Marv co-created Blade with Gene Colan in the pages of Tomb of Dracula. Yeah. So, Marv Wolfman said, in 1972, I was a fledgling comics writer who mostly wrote short 2 to 8 page monster stories when editor Roy Thomas asked if I'd like to write Tomb of Dracula, my very first series for Marvel, and the book that would jumpstart my career. So, it is a real thrill now that 50 plus years later, Marvel asked me to once again dive into that pool. I think that would be fun. Yeah, that's right. That does. There was a lawsuit about Blade and rights. I think that was Marv Wolfman. I'm sorry, I didn't think to look that one up. I think it was all settled out of court for what it's worth. Yeah, Andrew Jefferson mentioning that too. So I think you guys are right, and it's just it's been a while. Huh. I thought one of Blade's powers were immunity to vampire bites. I think that was like a later sort of addition. Blade has gone through some evolutions at Marvel. I believe when it started, I don't think he really had any real powers per se. He was really just a vampire hunter whose mother had been bitten by a vampire. It's hard to remember though. It's good thinking, though, in terms of continuity. We'll have to double check. Anyway, could be fun. Moving on. This looked cool to me, too. Marvel's doing this Predator versus Wolverine. I find that a little more interesting than their current Predator and Alien series. No disrespect to the creative teams who've been working on them. I just feel like... I don't know. I remember like Dark Horse doing a lot of really cool stuff with those brands, and I feel like Marvel hasn't quite yet until this caught my eye. I was like, okay, one of the Yautja aliens against Wolverine. I want to see that. So they've announced some variant covers. This is going to come out in September 20th, so about 1 month, a little less actually at this point. And by then I'll be in the land of the rising sun, fair Japan. Some of the variant covers. We've got this one here by Mike McCone. Well, this set, I should say. In-Hyuk Lee's doing one. Alex Maleev, Peach Momoko, Stephen McNiven, Scotty Young, Steven Segovia. Pretty nice lineup of artists to do that. And then, of course, the main covers by Marco Cicchetto, which looks fantastic. And the story, apparently, is not just to hunt Wolverine for the sport of it. No, I guess they're hunting, the Predator is hunting Wolverine because they want his adamantium. I don't know if they exactly want that as a trophy or if they literally want the medal. But either way, I like that there's just a notch more than just hunting it for a sport. I'm going to be in Japan for a little over 2 weeks. And then, I'll be back for a few days and then zipping right out to New York for New York Comic Con. It seems very unfair. I think it depends on what kind of weaponry the Predator brings. Because obviously we've seen some humans without superpowers beat Predators. But I think that this is a relatively fair matchup. Let's see. They only retconned Blade into having vampire powers after the movie came out. Yeah, that's what I thought. So that in the comics, something else happened to him to sort of have him match up to the movie version. Thank you for double checking there, Black Phoenix. Appreciate it. Let's see. There's a really cool YouTube video by Bat in the Sun that had Wolverine fighting the Predator. Guess who won? I would guess Wolverine. I did not see that video, but I remember that's something they at least used to do, was have guys getting really good cosplay and then just fight in an alley. That's cool. If the Predator can't take him, I hear Bonesaw is ready. That's my perfect impression of the late, great Macho Man. The cream of the crop. CrossGen Comics is returning in November. This is an actual cover of something coming out in November. Do you miss CrossGen? They had a few good things, to be honest. They did have some really good creators. I liked Way of the Rat with Jeff Johnson. I remember liking that. Although you will note, if you look closely, bing, there's a Marvel logo, not a CrossGen logo. So what's happening? November 2nd, we'll bring CrossGen Tales #1. It's going to reprint 4 issue #1s. It's a reprint book. Mystic by Ron Mars and Brandon Peterson. I didn't read that one, I have to admit. Sigil by Mark Waid, Barbara Kessel, Chuck Dixon, Ben Lai, and Ray Lai. I read it. I don't really remember it now that I'm thinking of it. Ruse by Mark Waid and Butch Geis. Ruse was kind of cool, actually. I liked the issues of... oh, hold on. I'm thinking of Rune. Ha! I'm thinking of Rune. Bear with me. Ruse, I don't think I read, actually. But I do like Butch Geis. I think he's an underrated artist. And Sojourn by Ron Mars, Ian Edgington. And that's definitely where Greg Land started to really make his name for what it's worth. This new cover is by Paco Medina. Paco Medina is pretty talented. I believe Paco Medina is the artist of the upcoming Spider-Boy book that Marvel's doing. They still won't do anything with Ultraverse or Men in Black. Yeah, I was thinking of the Ultraverse. I was thinking of Rune for a minute there, not Ruse. There was just this time in the late 90s where there were so many new publishers. It definitely got all together. Yep, Disney actually bought CrossGen. There was one particular book that was like sort of all ages that I guess they really wanted. Even though it ultimately did not get made into a movie, at least not yet. I can't remember that property now, but they wanted CrossGen for that. And then they basically shuttered the doors. And to be honest, all they're doing here is, in order to maintain their copyrights and trademarks, something we'll get into in another piece of news soon, you have to put it out there every once in a while. You have to just prove that you are still actively using it. So, was it Meridian? I don't think it was Meridian. I remember that title too, but it was something else. It was definitely one that I had never read, so that's why it's not coming to me. Butch Geis is awesome, but it's hard for him to do a monthly comic. Thick cover. There you go. Yeah. Anyway, I think Paco Medina made the characters look interesting. You know, I also think this. Marvel is publishing this, or Disney really, through Marvel, to maintain the rights. But if this sold well, then I would not be surprised if they tested the waters with other ideas. We'll see what happens. My prediction, probably not much. But CrossGen was very briefly very popular. They had a very different way of doing things. There was this investor guy called Mark Alessi, and he started the company, and he ran it like a normal job. It was set somewhere down in Florida, and they had an actual office, and the artists and writers were expected to punch in and out 9 to 5, come to work. And it seemed to work for a while. I think that there were 2 or 3 top tier guys that weren't made to move. I don't remember who, but yeah. Is the right for Ultraverse going to expire soon? I'm sure that Disney will not let that happen. No, they want to hang on to those rights too. That's it. That's the one. A1. I remember the name, but as soon as you said that, yep, Disney wanted a Batazad. Whatever that was, that's the one that they really wanted for some reason. They were developing it, and just never quite turned into anything for some reason. Hello, JLS. No plans for news stories. That's what I just said. Okay. So, had this in the thumbnail. Let's talk about it a little. I'm not going to go super in depth in this because there's potentially a lot of lore to all of this. But I'm not super interested in delving into that for this. I just want to talk about the news. But if you're not familiar, Isom is a comic book that was crowdfunded by a guy named Eric July. Basically, he's got a popular YouTube channel, very popular. dwarfs all of mine, so it's nothing. But what did he do? So he crowdfunded this book. I think he raised something like $2 million to publish the first issue. I took a look at it. I'll be honest, I wasn't impressed. It wasn't for me. I thought the art was like workman-like. It was not very exciting. I didn't find anything about like the story character that interested me. It wasn't for me. He's got his fans. I don't think that they're all necessarily comic book fans. They're more his fans, but whatever, you know, he's selling a book and that's that. But he also seems to have commit a pretty amateurish move here by not simply Googling the name that he put on the book. So, yeah, he ran this crowdfunding campaign somewhere around July of last year, okay? But there is now a trademark lawsuit. First page of that is here on the right, by an organization formerly known as Good Shepherd Ministries, obviously some sort of religious organization. They've been using Isom as their branding since 1999. That stands with them for the International School of Ministry. But they have definitely been using it. If you Google Isom and nothing else, most likely the first thing you are going to see is not going to be the comic, even though it sold a lot of copies and everything. You are going to find the Good Shepherd Ministries website, isom.org. And so I'm like, okay, you know, like this might have been news, this might not have been news, because, you know, like, is this case anything? Well, first of all, let me just explain. All this is so far is a complaint that has been issued to Eric July and his company. His company still has to respond to that. The complaint is about the trademark on the name Isom, which, to be clear, Good Shepherd Ministries absolutely holds and has been actively using and defending for a long time. They're asking for a jury trial. They're asking for a lot of money. So the question with trademarks is you can trademark a name. That doesn't necessarily mean that you get to use that name in every potential like iteration, like every kind of business you could possibly think of. You know, for instance, if somebody tomorrow created like Isom waffle makers, there'd probably be no cause for a lawsuit because there's no, it's not likely for the average person to conflate those two because they're so different. What I did was I spoke with a lawyer. I'm not going to like mention who or anything. I don't want to necessarily direct anything towards an individual that really isn't involved in comics or anything, like has no stake in this. And I said, like, you know, I'm thinking of reporting on this news unless this is like a nothing lawsuit. Could you just look over it and tell me if you think there's a case? Not who would win, but like, is there even a case here? And this lawyer said, after reading it, yeah, there absolutely is a case, just to be clear. In their opinion, you know, in their legal opinion, there's a case. There's a case to be made. You know, this seems small, but it can cause some of the confusion. Isom does have a cross on his belt buckle, which could connotate with the average person that's not like a regular comic book reader or anything. Maybe they think that the organization, Good Shepherd, is publishing it. So it's possible is all I can say. I would also say that, like, in my opinion, this is a pretty amateurish move. I would have Googled the name of whatever I was planning on putting on a comic book just to see where else it was being used, how actively, and in what context, because it could have been a very easy thing to avoid, to call this anything else. You could certainly call the character this name, but like to put it on the title, that just, it doesn't seem smart to me. I don't know. I don't think I would have made this mistake. And who knows which way the case will go. Will it go all the way to a jury? I would say almost definitely it will not go to a jury, but I do think that there's a chance that they've got enough of a case that July's lawyers could advise him to settle. I would not be surprised. We'll see. We'll see. I don't know. I don't know if it stands for anything in the comic. Like I said, I just took a cursory look and it wasn't really to my taste, so I didn't read it too much. I don't think you could term it a failure, just to be clear. I think it's a very big financial success. I just think this could potentially cost the creator some of that money. I'm not saying like anything massive, like half or anything crazy. I don't know anything like that, but it could cost some money. It could cost some money. Anyway, yeah, pretty easy to change the lettering. The most pain in the butt part is to change. Let's see. Guess so. I don't quite know all of that. Gotta change all that merch, like shirts. Possibly. That's the thing. Possibly you might have to change it. I guess that's pretty small here, but like this is their logo. It's Isom and the S is sort of like around the world. And then, like July is, I guess, selling related merchandise. Anyway. No, I don't know who Leonard French is, but it is not that. Is Isom public domain? I thought it was the name of a god or a mythical character. Well, even if it was, Jim, all I can say is, good question. That doesn't mean you can't have a trademark on something. Like I could call a company potentially Hercules, and depending on how I brand that, I could still have a trademark, maybe a registration on that I could protect in certain businesses. So it's possible. It's possible that like even if it's a public domain sort of idea or something, like I could name a company Dave if I wanted. Now we're in the day and age where you want to come up with something that like if somebody Googles it, they're going to find your place, not like something else. But yeah. That person's a copyright attorney. I did not speak to somebody that identifies specifically as a copyright attorney, but is a lawyer. And yeah. Trademark is also based on usage and field. And that's all I'm going to say is that, like, usage-wise, these people have a really clear case of using it like crazy for over 20 years. That's a long time. There's no question. And they do brand their merchandise, like they've got like shirts and hats and stuff like that. They have not created a comic book character, but then again, the comic book character does have that cross on his belt, and this is for a Christian organization. It's enough that like the person I talked to said that there's probably a case, and it's not something that would just be thrown out. We'll see what happens. Could make for interesting drama behind the scenes, I guess, if that's what you're into. I thought it was worth at least talking about, but that's pretty much all I have to say. Yeah, the Dave channel. Yes, I'm just saying. Right. If Subway could try to get somebody to legally change their name to Subway, you could totally call a company Dave. But yeah, that's true. Like Subway is a very common term, and they called their company that. Hercules is the code name for the nutty. That's right. Hercules. There we go. You got me to do a perfect impression. Dave Channel not here, man. Anyway, I thought I'd talk about it just in terms of somebody made a very successful comic book. And in my opinion, I do think that they might have to potentially settle no matter what he might say publicly. And no matter how this arose, like it's got a case. It's got a case. We're going to move on. What else have we got today? Oh, this is fun. I love Christmas-related horror. And that may sound at first kind of like weird, but I'm a weird guy. No, what I mean is like it's weird to conflate. It might sound like horror and the holidays, but honestly, there is a tremendous history of horror and like ghost stories and stuff like that happening around Christmas time. Huge history. There'll be tales of old glories and tales of old stories of Christmases long, long ago. Blah, blah, blah. What is it? Like, there's something, a line to that song where they're saying, like, we'll be telling ghost stories. Christmas horror is great, you know? There's certainly been all sorts of goofy movies and stuff. Krampus is a great example. You're right. Like, that's a pretty horrific idea. Christmas horror is great. Yeah. So, what is this? Well, it involves James Tynion, and obviously he's making his mark in horror comics these days. Oh, that's right. The story, it goes like, there'll be scary ghost stories and tales of old glories from Christmases long, long ago. That's the line I was trying to think of. Anyway, it's called The Deviant, and it's going to be a 9-issue miniseries by James Tynion with artist Joshua Hickson. The story starts in 1972 Milwaukee, well known to all of us as the scariest place on earth. 1972 Milwaukee was the scariest. I don't know. And it's about a serial killer called the Deviant Killer who stalks and tortures young men. That sounds pretty grounded and scary to me. I'm interested. And then it's also going to be conflated with in the modern day, a journalist interviewing a man who was arrested and convicted of these crimes, but who claims he's innocent. So the killer might still be out there. Yes, Silent Night, Deadly Night. My goodness. I think that there were 5 movies in the series Silent Night, Deadly Night, based purely on the premise of someone dressing in a Santa Claus suit and going out to kill. Nowhere near as good as the Tales from the Crypt comic that told the same story. A little girl like opens the door of a killer wearing that outfit at the end, much to the horror of the mother who's alone with the child. Great Tales from the Crypt story, which probably was turned into an episode of the TV show. But all I know is the comic. Everybody's quoting Silent Night, Deadly Night. I think that was the second one. Might have been the third. Garbage Day. One of the all-time bad line readings. Yeah, everybody's saying Garbage Day. That's great. Rich Evans lives in Milwaukee. Coincidence? Oh my God! It might just be a coincidence, just to be clear. Yeah, Jack Frost, right? I think it sounded cool. I generally like James Tynion's stuff. And yeah, let's get some Christmas horror this year. I love it. Let's see. Hold on. It was an episode of the show, and it was adapted for the 1970s movie. Oh, so it was adapted twice. That series, by the way, that we were just talking about, the movies, Silent Night, Deadly Night, the second one, if I'm remembering right, spends, I think, 40 minutes. I'm pretty sure I'm remembering this right. You can check me on this. I'm pretty sure it spends the first 40 minutes recapping the first movie. It's all just footage from the first movie. It just takes the first movie and condenses it into like the first half of the second movie, which is a hilariously massive amount of screen time to devote to recapping the first movie. I am right. Thank you. I was like, it was such an egregious amount of screen time devoted to recapping the first movie that I always remember that. Oh man, I just love how cheap that is. They're like, we could basically film like a TV episode worth of material and call it a movie. Let's see. The first Silent Night, Deadly Night was controversial. It was pulled out of the cinemas in a short time. I think I remember hearing that. Another person saying it. So it must be true. If 2 of you say it, I'm going to believe it. How much of a comic do you remember? I tend to remember comics better than I remember like other media for some reason. I don't know. I think I really internalize it when I read something. I think I do. I guess same for books now that I think of it. Yeah, I internalized that a little more. Maniac Cop 2 did it? I don't remember that. Maniac Cop 1 was the one with Bruce Campbell in a small role as a cop, right? Maniac Cop 1? I don't think it was the second one. Yeah. Moving on. This guy is a Batman super fan. Certified. It's proven. Let me tell you about him. This guy's name is Brad Ladner, and he owns 8,226 individual pieces of Batman memorabilia. And that is enough to be the most. He started collecting, he says, in 1988 with Batman, A Death in the Family. That was a really good story. I think Jim Starlin wrote it. I know Jim Aparo drew it, and I remember the covers by Mike Mignola were what caught my eye. It's really cool. Good story. Good story. Well, it was the death of Robin, but, you know, it was well done, I thought. Anyway, Guinness World Records has certified that Brad has the largest Batman collection. But he had some interesting quotes that I want to point out. One was, he says, I had a database where I coded it to search multiple eBays across multiple countries almost instantly so I could find items that were really only ever released in foreign markets. That's some dedication. That's some dedication there. I wouldn't know how to do anything like that. He also says, and I like this, it is important to keep a hobby and not make it too much of a part of your life. That sounds like good mental health there. So good for him. Good for him. Too many Batman things for my taste. Well, that's why he's got the record and you don't. Still, that's pretty much. I don't think that they are counting the individual comic books, but they could be. With 8,226, it's possible. It's possible. I don't know. We'd have to go to the Guinness Book of World Records to know that. But that was news this week. Guinness put out some sort of a statement with these quotes and stuff. So kudos, Brad Ladner, for having the world's biggest collection. He was asked which part of his collection meant the most to him, and he said the original DC Superpowers action figures, because he actually played with them as a kid. How can he say it's important to not go overboard but still have the largest collection? Gene, people are full of contradictions. Full of contradictions. All I can say is maybe this is part of his life, but not all of his life. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe this shirt counts as a piece of memorabilia. I don't know. I have around 75 pieces of Batman stuff. Am I close to him? Yeah, you're in number 2. You're a distant number 2, but you're in number 2. I have 2 Batman figures. That might be do I have 2? I have 1. I have a Hot Toys Dark Knight figure. I don't know if I have a second one. Narrator. It was all of his life. I really need to find a way to get Richie Cunningham to narrate my shows. We'll see what we can do. Who's your favorite Batman writer? What an interesting and tough question. Who is my favorite? It's not easy, but I think I might go with Grant Morrison. Maybe that's a safe answer, but I think Grant Morrison has given us a lot of good Batman stories and created some cool, more modern things. You know, Damian Wayne, Professor Pig. I think that I'd say that, but it's not easy. It's not easy. Oh, you have about 25 Batman items? All right. Well, then you're in the lead now. Bob the Goon, best toy ever. Bob the Goon. R.I.P. Shout out to the big one. Let's talk about this. I also had this in like the thumbnail. Comic Book Resources posted this thing that we see to the left, which shows that there are some serious internal problems there, which we might have guessed, but yeah. Let's see. So this was a post that literally did go out. Went out on, I think that was Tuesday, the 22nd. It says, despite rumors to the contrary, we have not eliminated our news section. We simply fired all the news editors who didn't resign in protest and have been slowly gutting our other departments as Valnet owns comic book resources. As Valnet continues CBR's shift to an AI-driven, clickbait-focused content mill. Ouch! Ouch! Somebody got access to their Twitter account and certainly zinged CBR, or really Valnet. So let's go into that. So, yeah, it was last Tuesday that they posted this. That was then quickly deleted. CBR managing editor, their editor, and I don't think they have an editor-in-chief right now. But anyway, CBR's managing editor, John Avridson, said that this was false and that the company has an anti-AI policy. However, in response to that, former Screen Rant writer, and Screen Rant is another company owned by Valnet. Valnet is a Canadian company that owns a bunch of different media companies. And they bought CBR, I don't know, a decade or two back. Not 2 decades, but like a while back, they bought them. I don't know. I don't remember the exact year. Who gives a shit? Anyway, so Liam McGuire worked at Screen Rant, and he replied to this saying, that's not true for all of Valnet's companies, the anti-AI policy. Yikes. And you know what? Sadly, that is becoming actually kind of common. I used to really like the AV Club. I thought that the AV Club had some really talented writers and reviewers. Sometimes now, when you click on an AV Club article, it literally has a disclaimer saying this was AI written based on data from, and it'll say something like IMDb. Yuck. Not great. Not great content. CBR, we've talked about this in the news ever since May. They continue to lay off editors. Well, like basically it all started. I'll give the super brief recap. In May, they laid off their editor-in-chief and a few other top-level editors, and then several other top-level editors resigned in protest. And behind the scenes, what some writers were for CBR were alleging was that Valnet was pushing the website to produce more content, and that the editor-in-chief was pushing back and saying, no, I think that we're working our employees more than hard enough. That's an unreasonable request. And they were like, cool, see ya. So at first, I'll be honest, at first I found this post funny. I did. It's a little funny. I mean, it's so obviously like just like flaming CBR. And then as I was reading the news, I go, you know what? This is actually kind of sad because there are a bunch of writers and editors there still, and they're probably none of them happy. And that's not fun to think about, that these people are trying to write about comics, something that they're passionate about, and in all likelihood, they're just being pushed to create, like clickbait content. It's too bad. They can still get some good interviews and some good reviews in there. I sincerely believe that. Brian Cronin, who works there, does some tremendously interesting comic book history articles. So I'm not trying to trash the people that comprise CBR. I want to make a distinction here that I'm very disappointed in the company that owns them, that's pushing them to this. What else did I want to say? Oh yeah, John Avridson, the managing editor, also pointed out how this happened. And basically they said that like somebody logged in through a third-party system with a login. So they're obviously not really managing their logins well, but that means it could have been probably was a former employee, and they just didn't update their passwords and login stuff. So, yeah. It looks like a lot of people are sort of saying some good things. Brian Cronin's articles are always great. I respect the writers they hire, not the fat cats who own these kinds of seats. I'm pro AI. Humans are cool as individuals, but as a whole, we really suck. Okay, well, that's a take. Their comics, Urban Legends, were so good. Yeah, definitely. Brian Cronin is the MVP, but I think writing for CBR isn't his full-time job. I hope not, just because it doesn't seem very happy there right now. It doesn't seem like people are loving the work or the environment. Certainly not if somebody's going to make a post like this. I will be powered by AI? I don't think so. I enjoy writing. So I don't think I'm going to outsource that to a machine that will just basically write in a very cliched way. That would be kind of the ultimate disservice to my channel. We got more news. We went through that one. What else we got? The Batman Experience is coming to London. Any of you guys in or near London? Hello, Nian Nian. That's nice of you. Why is this happening? There's a reason. Batman Unmasked is the name of this event, and it's a pop-up experience, as in it's just like there briefly. And it's there because they're going to celebrate Batman Day. Batman Day this year falls on the 16th of September. And this one will have things like costumes and props and vehicles from the various, Batman movies and TV shows and such. And they say that there will also be stuff like, related to their comic books. I don't know what props there would be for the comic books off the top of my head. And then, they're going to publicly humiliate Batman by unmasking him, which is the part that's definitely worth the £5. No, I don't. Let's see. Hold on. There was more to this. They said that they will also have over 100 Batman comic books available to read in a special comic book area. Bizarrely, they said that the experience will only take about 30 minutes to experience, while also claiming that it's like the most in-depth Batman experience of all time. Seems to sort of conflict with each other. I would imagine that 30 minutes does not include reading time, that however much time you take to read would add to that. But yeah. And then there was, I think, one more piece to this news, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. So even though Batman Day is September 16th, the event is going to happen from Friday the 15th all the way through Sunday the 17th. So it's actually 3 days. It's at 180 Piccadilly. If you want to get your Piccadilly on. And whereabouts on London? Like I say, you could look that up with 180 Piccadilly. If you also look up things like Batman Experience or Batman Unmasked, London 2023, you'll find that you can buy tickets. I think that, I forget the name of the ticket place that's selling it. It's not super expensive. I would say probably not in-depth enough to go too far out of your way for, but if I was if this was in Seattle, like my city, I'd consider going to it. I would consider that. Yeah, that's right. That is part of the experience. Is at the very end, they put you in a cardboard box that they have written in Sharpie the word Batmobile on, and that counts as riding the Batmobile. But it probably will be raining because it's London, so it might be a bit of a mushy experience. That's just what you have to expect. But the good news is they have a lot of boxes for you to sit in. A lot. So that's pretty nice. Batman in the Circus. Yes, it takes place at Piccadilly. We've all heard of Piccadilly Circus, I think. And the great news is there will be, they say, a 20-minute segment dedicated to Robin's parents dying in the circus. I'm making that part up. Hey, a super chat. Thank you so much, Meow Nian. First super chat of the night, actually. Thank you very much. The Batman Experience. Line up with your parents so that we can shoot them. Well, shoot them with spitballs, YouTube. Don't demonetize me. Don't demonetize. LOL Jojo. Oh, Jojo says the mushiness is to prepare you for the food. Oh, good. We're getting in all our digs on London. They've had it too good for too long, folks. Let's get them. Let's get those guys. And let's do more comic book news. Boop. What was Marvel's reason for Ms. Marvel's death and resurrection? Because that obviously came and went very, very quickly and seemed a bit shallow. Well, they've actually opened up about why they did it this way. So, just to recap, Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan, died in Amazing Spider-Man number 26. That was in May. And of course, we'd heard the news and rumors a little earlier than that. She returned just 2 months later in Hellfire Gala. She was resurrected. Turns out she's a mutant. She's also still an Inhuman, but she is still a mutant. So the mutants have these resurrection protocols, and they were able to bring her back to life. Marvel's version of bringing characters back to life. But anyway, she was literally only dead for 2 months, in which time they, built up the hype that she was dying. They released a book in the middle there called like Funeral for a Friend. Well, this month in Amazing Spider-Man issue 32, editor Nick Lowe had an explanation. There's a wall of text, but I'm going to read it to you because I will never make you guys read. I know you love comic books for the pictures, not for the reading experience. Here's what he says. As for whether it was cheap or not, we've been dealing with the fallout in these issues since, which speak for themselves, character and story-wise. But I'll give you a peek behind the curtain for some of the more meta elements. As we were planning out Kamala's story, the opportunity to take advantage of Krakoan rebirth presented itself. We wanted to make sure that we put the biggest spotlight on Kamala's journey that we could, which is Amazing Spider-Man. In other words, this was all retroactively figured out because they wanted to potentially reimagine her, and they decided they'd reimagine her as a mutant. Anyway, we had already brought Kamala into the series by then, Amazing Spider-Man, so it seemed perfect. I still stand by the story in Amazing Spider-Man number 26. Kamala is a superhero. She showed up to a giant supervillain fight and got involved, which is what a hero does. She risked everything to save a life, which is what a hero does. It cost Kamala her life. Was she the central focus of the book or the story? Nope. But honestly, to me, that's also life. Things happen that don't go the way stories should go. But what Kamala did was completely in character and on the biggest stage in comics, getting more people talking about her than had in years. So they said the quiet part out loud. Like, this was all just built to generate hype for the character. I think it possibly could have carried a lot more weight if they had this plan, but had spread that out. If you had killed Kamala and she'd been missing for 2 years, it probably would have been a much bigger deal for her to come back. So we'll see. Well, you're saying like she's a mutant on the Disney Plus show, and that's why she was retconned. Keep in mind, Zeb Wells was writing Kamala in both the TV show and the comic. He easily could have planned the comic before the TV show. Comics take a lot longer, and he introduced her as a supporting character in the comic long before the show came out. So I'm just saying, like, it's not necessarily that the show forced a retcon. It might have. You could be correct. I'm just saying it's not necessarily the case. But the writer was involved in both things. So it's probably some sort of synergy there where he was just like, I've got an idea, I'm going to put it in both things. Probably. But that said, I don't love the mutant resurrection protocols that they are so casually used. It sort of reminds me of, like, I like Star Trek, but I also think that, like, the transporter basically kills you and just, like, clones you somewhere else. Hi, Cat. Yeah. We might have a guest star that wants to chime in here. You want to come in? Hi. You want to say hello? What a good kitty. Come here. Come here. No? All right. Kitty doesn't want to show up. I'm sorry. Now you do want to? You don't know. Just interrupting the show. That's cool. Thank you, Kat. Anyway, I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah. The transporters. I feel like in Star Trek, technically, I mean, they're breaking you down into like they're scanning everything about you and transmitting that energy, which is data, and reassembling you. But that's not you. That's like a duplication of you. I feel like that's all that the mutant resurrection protocols are. They're saying that they like psychically back up like who the mutants are several times a day, and they're putting that mind into a cloned body. But like, is that truly you? Is that, I don't know. It's weird to me. I thought it was an interesting idea when it was introduced at the beginning of Jonathan Hickman's run as a sci-fi idea, but I had no idea they would just keep using it for a couple years. I thought that it was going to be used once and would sort of create some storytelling possibilities there of like people going like, am I really me? And I sincerely thought that they were going to do something about explaining, oh yeah, we've got like mutant who can move souls or something. I mean, there's a mutant called Dead Girl in X Statics that can talk to the dead. Like I thought that it was going to be something like that, but I don't know. Yep, the resurrection protocols are gone now. That's another thing. Like, I don't understand. I'm not reading enough Marvel comics for this. Like, when Wolverine died, how did they like redo his adamantium each time? Or did he not die that many times? I don't know. But it's something I'm curious about. Here's a slightly more positive aspect of this. So we do, no matter what, we've got a new take on Miss Marvel. She's, still herself. She's still got her same supporting cast and everything. She's just got some motivation to find out, who the killers of the mutants are. This terrorist organization called Orchis. So there's this new comic, and one of the writers is Iman Vellani, the actress who plays her. So she was interviewed this week on Marvel.com about her experience writing the new Miss Marvel comic book. I thought this quote was interesting. Not so interesting that I won't take a sip of coffee, but interesting. A lot of the scenes that we wrote for this comic, I had already written in my journal a long time ago. There were just things that I was pulling out and using, things from my own experience, because my life has changed so drastically in the last 3 years, and so had Miss Marvel's in the comics. So I wanted to incorporate a lot of what I learned throughout this entire process into her book. Some give and take. She's talking about her journal that she created as an actress to understand the character. I think that's an interesting element. She also said, I was learning a lot more about myself, actually, about how I deal with big changes in my life and the type of people I need in my environment, my support system. And I really relied on my family and my friends. So we had Bruno being a big character in this story, actually. Okay. Hey, I think that the best stories rely on real emotions and real relationships. So if something from there can be taken and added to the Miss Marvel comic, could be a positive. I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to read it, give it a shot. This cover for issue 1 is a variant cover by Sarah Pichelli. I just like her art, but I'm going to give it a shot. I like the character of Miss Marvel. I really do. So hopefully this works. Speaking of Marvel super heroines, we're going to talk about Spider-Gwen. She's got a new title coming out called Spider-Gwen Smash, which will introduce new heroes. So Spider-Gwen Smash is the new Ghost Spider / Gwen Stacy, whatever you want to call her, story. She's in Earth 65 in Marvel continuity. Boy, I say that and it kind of drained a little energy from me. I'm a little burned out on multiverse stuff right now. It can be done well, but it's a little burnt. It's burned me out a little. This story will follow Gwen with her band, the Mary Janes, on tour. Take her into new environments. Going to do a 4-city tour as a band. And it promises that we'll meet characters like Dazzler and Lila Cheney. That's awesome. Dazzler and Lila Cheney are both superheroes, mutants technically, who also happen to be rock stars. I think that makes sense in this world, that Gwen would cross paths with people like that potentially. That's a good idea. As far as the creative team, we've got Melissa Flores, well known for her, what do you call it? Power Rangers. And she also writes, I think, is it The Dead Lucky? Yeah, she also writes Dead Lucky. So she's got some chops there when it comes to writing superhero stuff. Artist on the book is going to be Enid Balam, and the cover art there that you're seeing is by David Nakayama. And he goes by DNA, David Nakayama. Gwen Stacy was created in 1965, hence Earth 65. It's a delightful little in-joke for us comic book nerds. We love that stuff. Thank you. Enid is a pretty solid artist. Good. I'm not super familiar. Yay, Lila Cheney, back to the old Silvestri X-Men days. And she was also, I believe, in New Mutants a bunch because she was dating Cannonball, Sam Guthrie. There we go. Yep, somebody backing me up. Thank you, Out of Voida. I've been out of Marvel, but hopefully Cannonball can be included. I think in the modern comics, that Cannonball married Smasher. Ironically, this is Spider-Gwen Smash, but I'm pretty sure that he married Smasher, who's like part of the what's it called? Lalandra's Empire. Oh, the Shi'ar Empire. Shi'ar Empire. I'm pretty sure I've got that right. Boy, is that nerdy stuff. Cannonball is dead now? Well, he'll be back. He'll be back. My favorite Avenger. He was an Avenger in a good run. There's going to be a new edition of Adrian Tominay's Shortcomings. I don't know how many of you have read Adrian's comics. I happen to like them quite a bit. I think that they are funny in a very sort of real-world, relatable way. There's always some good drama in his stories. There's always something very personal about it. So, Drawn and Quarterly is going to publish this book, Shortcomings, a screenplay by Adrian Tominay, and that's going to come out sometime in 2024, probably early 2024. This was originally a comic book that he published in, I believe it was called Optic Nerve, back in 2007, and since then was collected into, a trade paperback. I'll get to that point in a minute. First, I'll just tell you the plot. It tells the story of Ben. He's an Asian American. He's not really interested in the politics of being an Asian American and dealing with cultural identity issues, but his girlfriend is. And then to add to that sort of distance and separation between them, he's got a bit of a wandering eye. He's got an attraction for European women. So that creates some issues. I have a bunch of Optic Nerve and they're so good. Absolutely. Shortcomings is fantastic, as is everything by Tominay. Yes. Great artist writer. Really, really good. Really, really good. It was adapted into a live action movie this past year by Randall Park. First, you've probably seen him as an actor in tons of stuff. He was one of the leads on that show. What was it? Fresh Off the Boat. I remember him from Channel 101. He was in shows on Channel 101 before he started doing lots of movies. What other things has he done? He was in The Interview. He played Kim Jong-un in that one. He's really funny. I like Randall Park a lot. I just like him. But he made this into a movie. And so this new book is actually, what am I thinking? He was Jimmy Woo in the MCU. Great point. And he was an evil scientist in Aquaman. So let's not forget that. He upgraded Black Manta at the end of the movie. Yeah, he's been in tons of stuff. He was Asian Jim on The Office. Yes, he's the FBI agent from Ant-Man. But he turned this comic into a live action movie. Oh, and I've got the coolest little trivia about the movie in just a sec. But this book, just to be clear, is really the annotated screenplay. The final shooting script for the movie. It will also include things like behind the scenes stories and photos, the designs they had for things, as well as a new comic in there. So a new comic by Adrian is going to be in this reprint. So I'm going to pick that up as soon as I can. That's exciting. So I found this out fairly recently. The costuming, the person in charge of the costumes on Shortcomings is Larry Hama's daughter. Larry Hama, basically the guy who, in my opinion, created the characters in G.I. Joe. Also had an extended run on Wolverine with Mark Silvestri that was awesome. Wrote the Avengers for a while in the 90s. It's done a million things. Editor on Conan when it was amazing at Marvel. Just so many good things. So many cool. And his daughter is a costume designer. She went to school for fashion, and she was the costume designer for this movie. So it's sort of just interesting to see two people from sort of the world of comics a little bit like crossover in movies. So yeah, I would love to see more Jimmy Woo too. That would be nice. He was good on WandaVision, but that's Randall Park. Randall Park's a really likable, funny guy. He's very charming. So anyway, you might want to see the movie. You might want to pick up the comic. You might want to pick up the screenplay. Just thought I'd put that on people's radar. There's some indie stuff that's just so good, and Adrian Tominay's stuff is fantastic. It really is. Great artist, good stories, really, really good. There was an interesting article this week comparing the prices from different publishers who make foil covers. Foil has become kind of a popular variant cover these days. In the 90s, we had like chromium covers and we had like holographic covers and stuff. But the popular sort of gimmick these days seems to be just sort of a foil cover. It gives everything a metallic sheen. So there's a gentleman named Rod Lamberti, and he runs Rodman Comics in Iowa. He wrote an article this week for Bleeding Cool talking about these foil cover prices, which I was fascinated to see the differences. Yes, that's right. There was a cover in the 90s that like had the gimmick of if you rubbed it really hard and got it warm, the blood would come out. That was what I don't think it was for Youngblood, but it was definitely for like a Rob Liefeld book. Was it for Brigade? I don't know. Thanks for jumping in. So let's go on and see some of these prices here. So this is all data coming from Rod himself in the article, but he says Army of Darkness Forever #1 from Dynamite has a cover price of $5.99. His cost $3. That's a pretty awesome profit. It's a 50% discount. Makes sense for a comic book store. Ranger Academy #1 by Boom Studios. The foil cover is $9.99. His price, $5. Again, 50%. Pretty darn nice profit. Makes sense to stock a few of them. They're more expensive. You're only going to sell so many. But if you can make that kind of a profit, it makes sense to just get one or two. And then there's Carnage #1 from Marvel. Cover price is $5.99. His cost is $5.50. That's if he orders it through Diamond. A 50-cent profit is pretty small. Throwback to the 90s. Give Vidya a like. Thank you, Steve. I always appreciate it when you guys can take a moment to hit like on this. Takes 2 seconds, but always boosts it in the algorithm. So anyway. Oh, I love that cover. Yeah, I did an episode about variant covers and gimmick covers, and I love the Ghost Rider glow-in-the-dark one. But 50 cents is terrible. Hey, Daniel, nice to see you here. Let's see. Rodman is in Ann Kenny, my high school stomping grounds. Cool. There's a little more to this, just to be clear, because you can, of course, order the Marvel Comics through Penguin, which is their main distributor. Like through Diamond would sort of be a sub-distributor, so you're not going to make as much of a profit, but it might be easier to just order all from one place. But if you order Carnage through Penguin, it still costs $5.03. So you're still only making 90-some cents profit on it. That's just not a lot of profit for like a variant cover. It's just not. There's not much there's not much skin in the game to make a shop want to cover that cost, lest they be stuck with an expensive comic. But the craziest thing is just like, look at this. Dynamite and Boom Studios produce some great comics, but clearly they have nowhere near the market share of Marvel. And yet they've obviously figured out a way where they can produce these foil variants and get a profit on like $3 and let the comic book store get a profit. So why is Marvel charging so much? That doesn't make any sense to me. He is showing the cost. The cover price is what it sells for to us, the person that buys a comic, and then his cost is what the store is paying to get it from a distributor. There's always like markups at every stage, like there's the cost there's the cost for the comic publisher to get it printed. There's the cost that the distributor sells it to the store, and there's the cost that the store sells it to us. That's the same for any physical good out there. And I agree, people, like comics are too expensive, but I wanted to talk about a specific thing. Foil variants, they're always going to cost a little bit more. They cost more to produce, and they're never going to be produced in as big a scale. So, you get like discounts the more things you print, but obviously they're not going to ever print as many. But this is wild to me to see that kind of a difference, that Marvel is giving like maybe a 50-cent profit where Boom is giving a $5 profit and Dynamite is giving a $3 profit. Like that's bonkers to me. Like, Marvel, what are you thinking? All you're doing is incentivizing these retailers to not even bother. So why are you even making it at that point? I just don't understand. Like, it's like, don't gouge anybody, but certainly don't gouge the stores. They're your first customer. We're sort of your second customer. First, you have to sell it to the store so that the store can sell it to us. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, is that Marvel is just either managing it terribly and their costs are way too high. I don't really believe that. More likely, they are just taking a huge chunk of that profit, and that's greedy. Curses foiled again. That's what I should have titled this a whole episode. On the one hand, pricey. On the other, shiny. I have gotten one or two foil covers just because I was like, what? Damn, does that look cool? And I'm like, I'm being such a sucker buying this, but it looks cool. I fall for it every once in a while. Not too often. I'm not too into variant covers. They do look good. They do look good. They don't have to go through Penguin to order Marvel books. Diamond will still like sort of order it on your behalf through the other distributors. So that's why if you look at the last two bullet points, it's showing the cost through Diamond of $550 and the cost through Penguin is $503. Obviously, you can save more money if you order it through Penguin, but some comic book stores might not be huge, and it might be literally easier for them to order everything through Diamond. It might be. They're sacrificing a little bit of their profit there. I wouldn't do it, but maybe it makes sense for some stores too. The shop I work at doesn't mark them up, but we just order one, and whoever gets it gets it. That's kind of how the shops that I seem to have in my area work. Is they'll just order one or two maybe, and whoever gets it has gotten it. And if it doesn't sell, then they might mark it up, but like it'll probably sell. Just an interesting article there, really, about how Marvel's handling it. I didn't see the prices for DC. Rod didn't include that in his article, but Rod did say he made more of a profit on the DC foil variants. So DC must be charging something fair as well. I don't know. Something to keep in mind. Maybe your local shop would be willing to share with you what their margins are. I don't know. I am definitely going to be reading this book. And when I came across this, I was like, I got to talk about this. Writer Tom King and artist Peter Gross are doing an update to Animal Farm, a book that I actually really enjoyed when I was younger. So it's going to be called Animal Pound, and it will be an updated take on George Orwell's classic novel Animal Farm, because Animal Farm, as well as a bunch of other George Orwell works, have now moved into the public domain. They're pretty old. And so now, if you want to make something based on Animal Farm, you can. Yeah, it's out there now. So here's the sort of general plot. When animals grow tired of being caged, killed, and sold off, it's only a matter of time before they've had enough. After an uprising puts the animals in control of a pound, they quickly find themselves as comrades, united against everything that walks on two legs. But with this newfound power comes a sudden challenge: how best to lay the groundwork for this new democracy. Essentially, the plot of Animal Farm, just taking place in a pound instead, but it's going to update it by, really talking about the dangers of politics, just like that was really what Animal Farm was about. It was not about talking animals. It was just saying, like, hey, if there was, like, all of a sudden the animals were smart enough to, like, rule themselves, they'd have to form a government, but would they do a good job? Well, it turns out maybe not. Spoiler for a book that's like 100 years old. It's not 100, but it's old. Yeah, so they're going to talk about this democracy that the pets sort of form in this pound. It's going to be a two-party system that starts to break down and leads to fear and fascism. And it's not that it's condemning democracy, just to be clear. It's a lot deeper than that. It's talking about how human beings, in this case represented by animals, are fallible, and that there's no real perfect system, that we can create all sorts of rules, but they break down based on who is enforcing them. It's an interesting story, in my opinion. Quite deep, quite resonant. I love the idea of putting it in a pound and turning it into a comic book. I think that sounds interesting. I don't know how many of you have read Animal Farm and either liked or disliked it. I liked it, even though it's kind of a dark ending. I thought it was interesting. Yes, you can now make your Animal Farm Winnie the Pooh crossover. That would be legal. That would be legal. All of Orwell's work is about how broken our political views are. I think it's fair to criticize even things that seem to be, for the most part, working, because it keeps us vigilant. That's my take on things. 1945 is a long time ago from when it was first published. Long enough to fall into the public domain, apparently. But yeah, so that's coming through Boom Studios. I'm looking forward to it. I think that sounds interesting. I even find this cover quite haunting in its own way. It's there's blood. I don't know. And yet, I don't know. I find my cats adorable, but if they could walk and talk and think for themselves, I might be worried. What a weird Pound Puppy reboot. Pound Puppy, you're my one and only. And no, don't kill me. A lot of people sound like they're interested in. Good. That's great to hear. That's great to hear. We shall see. I hope it's good. Kevin Smith is coming back to comic books. He hasn't made comic books in quite a while. To the best of my knowledge, I can't remember him doing anything recently, but he's going to make some more View Askewniverse comics. Stuff set in his old, Clerks, Chasing Amy, Dogma world. Jay and Silent Bob and all them. Quick Stops, yeah. So he's going to publish a 4-issue series through Dark Horse called Quick Stops 2, Volume 2. It's going to be a black and white anthology featuring, obviously, Kevin Smith, also artist Ahmad Rafat, and Andrew Thomas also doing some writing. The story is going to cross decades to tell the story of Mooby, the golden cow mascot. I'll give credit to Kevin Smith here. Boy, can he layer the puns. Mooby, the golden cow. That's pretty good. Let's see. He recently did some comics for Dark Horse last year, Masquerade. Oh, and Quick Stops Volume 2 was just last year? Okay, fair enough. Didn't remember that. And I think there was one other thing. Nope, I guess not. I thought that there was more, but I guess that's all I've got to say. I don't know if I'll read this. I definitely remember reading his early View Askew Universe comics. Oh, in fact, now that I think of it, yeah, like Clark's. That was. I don't know if Jim is still in the chat room. Jim Mahfood, like some of his first comics were View Askew Universe stuff. He got one of his big breaks early on doing that. All that just hit me. But that's pretty cool. What's that? Paw Patrol versus Animal Pound. That's pretty dark. That's pretty dark. I don't think he ever did finish Widening Gear. I don't Gear, right? Isn't that how you pronounce it? I don't remember. Let's see. Mubi's best appearances in Dogma when Matt Damon kills their board of directors. Yeah. Oh, look at this. Here's a scoop, folks. I got a little something cooking with this new Kevin Smith series. Okay, well, I didn't see that in any of the press releases, or obviously I would have included it, but thanks for giving us a little tease there, Jim. That's exciting to think of you going back. What is it? It's got to have been something like 20 years, right? Sorry, that's really like blowing my mind to think about, because I don't think of it as that old in a way, but and it's not old, but it is a long time ago. Wow. Illustrated Kevin's first ever full-length comic book, Clerks the Comic Book, in 1998. 25 years! Oy, 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 oy. That's so long ago. Yes, I do remember that Chasing Dogma had Duncan Fegredo on art. Duncan Fegredo's great artist. Well, obviously, Kevin has a knack for getting some great artists to work on this stuff. But that also means that like it's been over 25 years of the View Askew universe doing movies and comics and even TV shows. Wow. So much. That's really cool. Oh yeah. Yeah, you should find it if you can. Man, Jim's stuff back in like 98. He was doing that, and Marvel gave him a Generation X comic book. And it's I don't want to embarrass you or anything, Jim. It's noticeably Jim Mahfood art, but he's like he's evolved as an artist. Like there's just so much more depth and tangibility and I'll call it like bravery in line art compared to like where it was then. It's really cool to see an evolution. But it was a good fit. I have both volumes of Girl Scouts, Mahfood Rules. See, if you want to just get props, all you have to do is stop by in the chat room, and people will do some nice things for you. We did a sequel as well, Clerks: The Christmas Special, with a cover by Art Adams. That's a nice pull. Yeah, very cool. Well, that could be fun. Good for Kevin Smith. He should always stay fairly close to comics. Jonathan Hickman and Valerio Schiti discussed their upcoming book, Gods. Maybe that stands for something, Gods. Gods is going to show the conflict between the powers that be and the natural order of things. So it sounds like chaos versus order. And there's some quotes here I want to read, but hold on. Will Kevin be able to deliver more than one issue per year? I'm pretty sure that they said they've got most of this already done. So I think we're safe there. Thank you for the super chat, Marvin. I appreciate that very much. That's really, really nice. It's really, really nice. So Hickman said this to CBR about this upcoming book. He says, we don't get a lot of opportunities to try out brand new properties in the current market. He means in comics in general. And I think that this represents not just a solid effort by the company, but a real swinging for the fence by Valerio, Marte, it means Marte Gracia, the colorist, and I, and everybody involved in the production of the book to really put something new out there. I hope that that's the case. Meanwhile, the artist, Valerio Schiti, said, this world must seem real. You have to feel like it's a real place with real people. I love to draw this kind of stuff, this magic and science stuff all thrown together. Well, hopefully it's good. If it would be pronounced Skeety. Thank you for the help on that one. I'm pretty sure it is Italian, so Skiti, excuse me, Skiti. Thank you for the correction. I will always give Jonathan Hickman a chance. I have been a big fan of many things that he's written. And the only thing is I do wish he'd do a little more creator-owned work interspersed with all of this. So we shall see. We shall see. Very Doctor Who-esque. Maybe. It's not magic, it's science. It's like a line from the films. But I think I get what he's saying. You know, like sometimes people will talk about how, why is there a black Captain America? And, you know, first of all, I think that that's a pretty natural evolution for Falcon specifically. But it is hard to create new properties that people will give a chance to. I think we even see that sometimes when a big name creates their own creator-owned comic, it can still be hit and miss sometimes. It can be. I like seeing new ideas and new stuff, but that's sometimes why they do this stuff in comics, like change up the role of a main character to sort of make it a legacy character. It's because they want to sort of almost use it like a backdoor pilot in TV. Like put this character in the role, evolve them, expose them to the audience, and then maybe like have the original come back, and then that character goes off and does its own thing. It's a method. It's a method. We'll see. I'm interested. I'm definitely interested. We'll see. Yeah, I don't really 100% know either. That's why I included this. We'll see. According to Jonathan Hickman, it's a very new idea, or at least some new characters. We'll see. There very well could be data pages. Look, Jonathan Hickman, that's a trope for him. He likes doing that stuff. We'll see. We're almost done with the news, and then I've got some reviews. Let's just see. Dynamite has got the rights to publish Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time. Now, I have not read those books. I enjoy fantasy from time to time, and I definitely have some friends that read the whole series. Robert Jordan and eventually I think it was Brandon Sanderson took over to write the final 3 issues in the Wheel of Time series. I know it involves, you know, essentially good versus evil. I know it involves like different sort of ages throughout. I think that there are like 7 spokes on like a Wheel of Time, like each representing a different age, and that like there's a character that will sort of like somehow imbue the forces of light, like or inhabit the forces of light to fight against a creeping darkness. I don't know though. I haven't read it, but the story apparently is that Randall Thor and his companions Matt Cawthon and Perrin Ibarra set out to retrieve the legendary Horn of Valar. We also are seeing that season 2 of the show is going to debut next week on Amazon. It'll be interesting to see how that does. Season 2, I think that, you know, it's clear that right now the streaming giants are putting out their big stuff. You know, like Disney's like, okay, we're going to do Ahsoka. Amazon's like, we're going to put out Wheel of Time. Netflix is like, we're going to put out the live action One Piece. We'll see what ends up like being actually good and standing the test of time. It's got some samurai stand-ins in the later half. Okay. It's still a big property, and so we shall see how it does. But, you know, kudos to Dynamite for, you know, nabbing this license. I think that that's, you know, when it's got like 2 seasons of an Amazon show, that's pretty big. And, of course, the books have been around since, I think, the 90s. Maybe longer. I don't know. That's funny. It went in reverse order for some reason. The writer of this is Rick Hoskin, and artist is Marcio Abreu, and they're going to adapt the second novel of the Wheel of Time series, which is called The Great Hunt. Should have had that first. Don't know why it did that. This one fascinated me. I really loved the documentary that was based on this gentleman's work and what he did for Bill Finger. Nobody has stood up for Bill Finger more than the guy I'm going to talk about. But he was actually asked not to do a lecture if he was going to use the word gay within his lecture, which is unfortunately a pretty important piece of this story. Let me break it down. So this is Mark Tyler Nobleman, and he wrote the book Bill the Boy Wonder, which was all about talking about Bill Finger's role in co-creating Batman and how much important stuff came from Bill Finger, even though Bob Kane clearly took a lot of the credit for that. Oh, thank you so much, Gantris. Can't stick around tonight, but hope you and fellow comic tropers are doing well. Doing even better with your super chat. Thank you so much. Hopefully you can watch it later, but thank you, Gantris. I sincerely appreciate that. Very, very kind of you. Hope you're doing well. And anyway, so this book, great read, first of all. Second of all, it was then turned into a great documentary. It was called Batman and Bill, and that's available on Hulu. Great documentary. And it continued the work that he built. Like, the book broke down all the important stuff that Bill Finger did, put it out into the world, like in a documented fashion, like, hey, Bill Finger was hugely important to the creation of Batman, more than we were giving him credit for. The documentary then started Mark's journey to find heirs of Bill Finger so that they could formally request the right for the comics to call Bill Finger a co-creator, because DC was not going to just do it on its own. But like, if an heir had the legal right to say, like, hey, I'm part of the estate, then they could, sue in court for the rights to either get that back or maybe settle for at least a credit and some money. And that was basically what they did. It's a fascinating documentary. And it's not as easy a story as you would think, because Bill Finger only had one kid. And the snag is that his only son was a gay man and was already dead a long time ago. So that's it. No heirs, right? Well, Mark Tyler Nobleman put in a lot of work and found out that even though he was known as being gay, he actually had a child. He did have a child. Mark currently tours the country discussing this history, his work, as well as, promoting Bill Finger's history. It's an interesting story. This past week, he was in Georgia to give a lecture, and halfway through, a principal handed him this note that we see here, which says, please only share the appropriate parts of the story for our elementary students. And he was like, what does that mean? And they were like, we don't want you to use the word gay. You can't use the word gay, or you should just leave. He's like, cool, I'll leave. It's an important part of the story. I'm not just going to ignore it or allied. So that's something that happened in the news this week. And the principal sent notes to all the parents in the school saying, like, we are so sorry that some of your children heard the word gay. And I'm like, and Mark, to his credit, is like, yeah, like, it isn't being used as a pejorative. It's being used to describe something that's real. Like, kids don't need to be protected by that. There was nothing sexual about this story. It was just an important part of the history. So just crazy. Georgia, afraid forever of children learning about the actual world. Nice to see you, Diana. Very, very excited to see the G.I. Joe stuff that's coming out. Diana, if you don't know, is a huge continuity expert in G.I. Joe and is Larry Hama's Girl Friday in that regard. So I'm pretty excited. And there were some preview pages shown this week of what the Skybound continuation of Larry Hama's G.I. Joe is. And oh my God, the art looks so good. It really reminds me of Lee Weeks, who did have a run on the Marvel G.I. Joe era. Oh, it looks so good. So excited. But anyway, it wasn't that bad when I was there as a kid, believe it or not. It was still bad in many ways, but not as bad as it is now. Yeah. if you hear the word gay, you could become gay. Yeah. Not he's sorry that they heard the word. The school system was apologizing that the children, some of the children, heard the word. They were like, we agree, it's totally inappropriate. It's like, what? It's not inappropriate to just hear these terms. It's not like he got into and he's like, and then Bill's son, climbed into the bed ready to make a baby. It goes into like all this detail about it. That's not what he's doing. He's just saying like, look, this was like a roadblock in finding an heir for Bill Finger. He had one son who was dead and he was known to be gay. So like there's probably no other heirs out there. But he did his research and he found out that there was. And that is what led to like that daughter of basically Bill Finger's granddaughter is the one that like was able to successfully sue. And now if you open a Batman issue, it says created by Bob Kane with Bill Finger. That's a really important distinction. It's Mark Tyler Nobleman did that. And it's just bonkers to me that like Georgia could throw up a roadblock like that. Just bonkers. Won't someone think of the children? Yep, time for all of us to make out. We heard it. What the hell does sexuality have to do with comics? Exactly, it doesn't, but we can definitely use the word. We can use the word. Yes, Batman did say gay, but it was used in a very different context. You can definitely find a lot of funny out-of-context comics now with Robin saying, Batman's trying to make me feel gay, but I can tell that he's just not into it. We will wrap things up with two more pieces of news and then some reviews. Excited for the reviews. Mark Millar gave some advice to Marvel and DC, or really the whole comics industry, but he was sort of aiming it at what he wants Marvel and DC to do, which is kind of interesting just because, of course, he's got his own Millar World, creator-owned stuff. But he was on a YouTube show this week and talked about it. So he was on the Thinking Critical podcast / YouTube show, as you can see here. And he said he thinks the industry needs to rally around Marvel and DC. Basically, his overall logic is that, like, when Marvel and DC do well, everybody does well. He feels that, like, when Marvel and DC is doing well, that brings more people into comics and basically, a rising tide lifts all boats. It's a fair, I don't know if he's right or wrong there. I don't really know if that's 100% accurate, but it's a fair take. It's a fair take. And beyond that, I would say, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. Give me 2 seconds. I guess I'm just thinking it's a little interesting in that, like, we know that Mark Millar has said that he does plan on writing a Superman book in, like, maybe 2024 or something. So he could already theoretically just be hyping his stuff up early. He is good at marketing, but I think he's got a bit of a point. So let's see. This is a quote, or several quotes that I've put together. I've strung together. He says, the real success comes from the industry. And I'm not just talking about as individuals, as creators, but the honest truth is that creator-owned growth comes from Marvel and DC doing well. Obviously, there's some great books. There's 2 or 3 good books, I think, at DC right now, but you need 20 good books. There needs to be 20 great books. He also had an interesting comment where he says that, like, Image hasn't created anything great, top selling since Saga. And out of that, there's been leaked an internal document, allegedly, from Image where they put their top 25 best-selling comics since Saga came out, and a lot of them massively have outsold Saga, which, by the way, is a fantastic comic. There's no question. Saga is brilliant. But, like Robert Kirkman and James Tynion and, of course, Todd McFarlane have all had some humongous hit books since Saga came out. So I don't think he's quite accurate. whatever. He was shooting from the hip. I don't think, he'd done the actual research, but it was interesting. So if you look that up, maybe I should have included that in the news too. That could have been interesting, but it was an interesting point. The show isn't Comicsgate, but it's very cringy. I've never seen it, but I do know that Mark leans a little more to the right these days. Whatever. Randy, lovely to see you. Sorry that I wasn't able to see you in person the last couple days. It would have been nice, but I'm glad that you and your family got to see a Mariners game. Let's see. Randy says it is a good model for creators to build a fan base at the big two and then have more successful creator-owned books. That can make. I agree with that. I agree that like most people that have like hit big success first hit some big successes at Marvel and DC. I think that that's fair. Marvel and DC should rally around comic shop owners. I think that would be a good idea too. I think that, they do a few things. They do some free comic book day stuff. They do some free comics for trick or read around Halloween, but they should probably do a few more like big ideas that are like built to bring new readers in. I think DC is doing a pretty good job actually with Dawn of DC. I do think that they are. Anyway, thank you, Randy. Last piece of news I want to go over. Valiant. I just, every once in a while I hear about them. I want them to stick around because I think that they have some good characters. But it's been a little while since they've really made an impact. It's been a few years anyway. They've seemingly canceled their titles. They didn't announce that they were canceling it. Here's what we found instead. So, first of all, we know that Valiant has been publishing only one title a month. Lately, it's been Exo Manowar Conquered. Or is it Unconquered? I think it's Exo Manowar Unconquered, and I'm covering this up. And then they'd announced that Ninjak Super Killers was about to come out. But they were just publishing one a month. That's what they were doing. But if you go to Diamond Distributors to like look to order them, they have now canceled all the listings for those comics. You can't order them. And on top of that, there are no listings for November either, because these were like listings for September, October timeframe. No, seemingly no news. The last piece of news that we had on Valiant that we talked about on this show was that like the books were going to in the future be published by a book publisher. I forget the name of them right now off the top of my head, but it sounded like they were taking steps towards rebuilding. But now these have just disappeared and there's no new listings. So, yeah, don't know what to say about any of it. Yeah, that's it. Alien Books. Thank you. An inside source said that because of the distribution going to Alien Books instead of Diamond, the books are just now delayed. Okay, so not canceled, just delayed. That makes a little more sense because I think that a bunch of the work has already been done. And I was curious what was going on with Alien Books. I just couldn't find anything about them listing them for distribution yet. So that's pretty delayed. Weird. Very strange. I'm going to turn on a new camera here and talk to you about some of the comics that came out this week, because there were a few really, really good ones. Yeah. Let's see if I can get that. And then I'm going to zoom in a little before I show it to you. Add that to the stream. Remove this. Get rid of this. And no, the other way around. Huh? Oh. I guess that'll do. Okay. Actually, I zoomed in a little too much. Hold on. I'm doing this manually so that it's not on a... Yeah. That's better. That's better. Let's talk about some of the comics that came out this week, because I was surprisingly impressed with a couple of them. And I'm going to start with the one that I was kind of most surprised by, although maybe I shouldn't have been. I picked up the Immortal Thor because it's being written by Al Ewing, and I really did love his Immortal Hulk run. I thought it was a fantastic run. It did something new with the character, and it had its own beginning, middle, and end. Really good run. So now he's taken over Immortal Thor, and I wasn't super familiar with The artist, Martin Coccolo. Hello, kitty cat. But I was impressed. So first of all, we've got a few ads to cycle through, but that's okay. We've talked about this last week. The cats are being crazy behind me. Hello. Would you like to say hello? No? Never mind. They're gone already. What to say? Basically, it involves a new enemy eventually. But before I even get to that, I want to talk about Martin Coccolo's art. Where was a page that showed sort of what I'm getting at? Here's a good one. I think that this is really good storytelling. I think that there's some really nice work done there with the gesture of the characters, as well as the choices on when to have sort of a wider establishing shot to show like where they are in relation to each other, as well as sort of more close-ups to show some important emotions. This is Thor talking with the current version of Loki. I really liked it. There's some changes in this. Loki seems to have the upgraded magical abilities, has rebuilt the Rainbow Bridge, which was apparently gone. I'm not super up to date on everything in Thor, but this one basically got me up to date. Look at that, nice. This is a hint of what's to come later in this book. A nice sort of double splash across the top of Thor flying across New York City. It's dynamic. It's detailed, but not too detailed. It looks like art. I like it. I like it a lot. One of the cool things is it involves new enemies. Basically, the gods above the gods, which actually has some basis in mythology. Look at that. It's been established early in this that Thor controls the storm. And yet, all of a sudden, this humongous lightning bolt destroys the Statue of Liberty, which Thor had been standing on. Look at the size and scale of this. This is a 2-page spread. It's got some real weight to it. And then we get some more splash pages. When Thor sees this, look, this is Thor. This is just this sort of massive giant coming out of the storm. We can only sort of see it, but the character's holding a lightning bolt, and then seems to have something in their other hand, which we will see. Look, this is another 2-page spread. And is holding a wheel. A huge man holding lightning and a wheel. Announces himself as the Utgard Thor. And in Norse mythology, Utgard was sort of like a level up, almost. It says his name is Tyrannos. Tyrannos this is a slightly different spelling of a Celtic god who was considered to be a very powerful god of the storm and time and stuff like that. So not explicitly Norse mythology that Al Ewing is pulling from, but is pulling from mythology that would have been in that sort of same northern geography, we could say. It's really fascinating. It's epic. When this Tyrannos arrives, we're seeing his lightning explode airplanes. Times Square is falling apart. Earthquakes in Central Park, floods in the tunnel. It's a big deal. Look, we get almost another whole double splash page. It builds to this though, because I showed you earlier that we had lots of just traditional panel storytelling. It builds in scope. Sorry, it's not focusing. There we go. It builds in scope. There are hints that these characters are tied to Thor's mother's side. And if you've only known Thor from the movies, you might think that Frigga is his mother. Certainly that's the Norse mythology. In the comics, his mother that raised him was Freya, but his mother was Gaia, the mother of Earth. And apparently her siblings are basically this Tyrannos and another character called Utgard Loki. Utgard Loki is a Norse mythology character. There are stories that describe him as being like dwarfing Loki, like Loki and Thor are on like, a walk and they come across this massive castle where a giant named Utgard Loki is. So Utgard Loki was a different character that was bigger and more powerful. So basically, yeah, it involves some somewhat new characters, but I thought the art was incredible and I thought it built very well. I thought this was really exceptional storytelling, folks. There is some writing flourishes here by, like this page is obviously being driven by a fair amount of sort of like dialogue, right? I just want to put that out there because I'm going to talk about a couple more comics and then I'm going to cycle back to sort of my thoughts on the balance of art and writing in comics these days. But I'm glad that so many people are like, responding well to this. Yeah. I got to check this out. Yeah. Utgard Loki is the narrator, I believe. Anyway, I do recommend it. I think I don't know exactly, where it will go. This is just one issue. It is like, a double-sized big issue. So it's pricey, but as far as like a good read, this was better than I expected. I picked it up a little bit on a whim. I hadn't been planning on getting this, but I am glad I got it. I think I'm going to stick with it for a little while and hope for the best. Here's another one I sort of picked up on a whim, but because I have been enjoying the ease of access to getting into the dawn of DC titles, and it's written by Tom King. And I've been impressed with Tom King in the last few years. Do you hear that? There's a cat acting crazy behind me. This is a book about Penguin. And I don't always like when a story does this. It starts with sort of the character about to die. He and Batman are in the Batmobile. They're both like dying. They both like Batman has been stabbed multiple times and is bleeding out. He can't get his hands to work. Penguin looks like he might have been shot or stabbed, and they're drowning. I don't always like that, but at least it sets the tone of like, okay, so they're in tremendous danger. The Batmobile is sinking in the ocean. They're about to drown. And then it says 1 year earlier in Metropolis. You don't have to have been reading the Batman comics to know this. It does establish the year. Penguin basically faked his death and decided to retire because he fell for somebody. He fell for a lady that's like his fiance, and he's trying to live the straight and narrow. Each page sort of like has word balloons in a different color depending on who is narrating the story. Sorry, there's an ad there. So there's different people telling the story every couple of pages. A little bit, just to be clear, like the Game of Thrones or Song of Ice and Fire books. If you've read those, it is interesting because you're getting different people's descriptions of what's happening. What I really liked about this is this. Everybody legit seems scared of Penguin. It builds him up as a threat. They're like, hey, this is a guy who survived against Batman for year after year after year somehow, built a criminal empire. And they're like, if he was doing that and constantly getting away, he was doing something right. And that's a good take on the material. Basically, he gets captured by the government, who know who he is, like Amanda Waller and her people, and they're going to get him to do something to make him work for them. But the people are legit scared of him while they're interviewing him and stuff. So that's cool. That's cool. I am curious where it goes. It legit makes Penguin seem dangerous. Like once he decides that he doesn't even like sort of like say anything. He just knows that he has to work with them because they've kidnapped his fiance. The government has. They're not great people. And he goes and like the first thing he does is he just beats the hell out of his tailor, who earlier in the book had said, oh, you've been losing weight. You look better now. And then like the tailor like realized he's like, oh my God, what did I just say? That like implies that at one point he didn't look good. But Penguin didn't lose his temper because Penguin was trying to live the straight and narrow. But as soon as Penguin decides that he's sort of like, back in the game, we'll call it, he just goes and beats the hell out of him. But there's also a subtlety. Look at this panel. He's holding his thumb up to his umbrella because that's the rule of thumb, people. Rule of thumb, this issue will explain to you. And it's used as a character beat to explain a particular, like, sort of nasty character and his thoughts. Not Penguin, just a sleazeball. And he's talking about how the term rule of thumb that we all use is like, like a guideline. The rule of thumb used to be a real thing about how men were allowed and perhaps expected to beat their wives by using the rule of thumb, as in you could beat your wife with a stick as long as it was less thick than your thumb. And Penguin's umbrella is not as thick as his thumb. It's pretty dark. But anyway, I was impressed again. A good crime story. Builds the character into something interesting. I'm curious to see where it goes. Now, what was my thought earlier? Basically, this is something I was talking to Larry Hama about at a convention recently, and he said, comics used to be primarily guided by artists. They knew it was a visual medium, and they built things out of momentum, at least in his era, like mostly the 70s through the 90s. And what he tries to do is he tries to build it more through the visuals than through the words. And he says these days, there's lots of people that are like, the writers are guiding things, and they all want to, they want to talk, like he's like, comics used to be like failed cinematographers and stuff. And now it's like failed novelists. Sometimes I see a lot of this and it makes me like, worry. I'm like, geez, like, is that compensating for like something we should be able to see visually? But I don't think that's the case in either of these, just to be clear. I think that there are cases where it is justified to have a good amount of text, and that is when it can add to the story. It can't overwhelm the visuals. It can't. If it really slows down your reading experience unintentionally, that's too much. It's not paced well. My opinions. But sometimes comics can do something that a movie couldn't. You can get into somebody's head and you can contrast, the text of something or somebody's inner thoughts with actions that are happening. So you can get a contrast between two different ideas. It can be done well. It's okay to have a bunch of text as long as it doesn't slow things down. So it's very tricky to figure out like what the exact breakdown should be. But I'll just say that, like, say I picked up some random manga, and actually this isn't a perfect example, it's from the 90s, but they're almost all written and drawn by the same person, and it moves fast. Like, look, this is like a minimum of dialogue at like what I pick up. Like most panels don't have tons of dialogue. It really lets the actions speak for themselves for the most part. That's just a random manga. Oh, you know what? What do I have here? Oh yeah, here's like some Katsuhiro Otomo in the original Japanese. He's got a lot of story to tell. Sometimes there's a bunch of text, but it's not quite as much as what we tend to see. And it's just something that I do wonder about, because I do think that comics these days seem to be driven a lot more by the writers than the artists. But it's a visual medium. And I think that you need to make sure that it like supports the visuals and gives you something different. Yeah, I see a lot of people mentioning different people. Let's see. Hey, Mike, always good to have you here, man. Speaking of words versus art and pacing, Claremont Lee X-Men comes to mind. That's fair. Bendis's comics are buried in text. Sometimes I think that text can be good. I think his early like Power stuff was really well paced. He can get too verbose. Lots of people mentioning Claremont, huh? Nothing wrong with a well-written narrator. It's a unique strength of the comics format. I agree. So what I'm saying is, like, it can do a good job. Like, like, I don't like this is some very flowery poetry-esque stuff talking about Thor and stuff. I don't know if that part is completely necessary, but a lot of the other stuff that I see does help. I don't know. Like, this is showing Thor going around the city, like, saving people, and how the people of Earth or Midgard love him. This is a little bit excessive, a little bit. This, I don't think, is as bad. Like, there are a lot of, like, narration bubbles, but it's doing something specific. It is grounded in the fact that we are seeing different narration from different characters every couple of pages, and it gives us a different insight or angle to look at the story being told. It's just something interesting to think about. All right, let's talk real quick about some of the other stuff. This is fair. Yeah, hold on. Could it be the difference between narration and dialogue that gives you pause? I think that the narration boxes you need to be careful with. I think sometimes people go a little too poetic describing what we're actually seeing, and it's redundant. But sometimes if it's giving us an inner monologue or a contrasting story, it can add. I'm not saying that it can't. I try not to have too much dialogue to give space for the comic book artists who I collaborate with on my graphic novels. I think it's important to, like, keep it a visual medium. I think that's very important. Yeah, Brubaker and Phillips' books are paced so well. Boy, and you feel it. You feel it when you finish, like, a story that you're like, that was not just good, but I read through it really quickly. I think that means good pacing. Good pacing. No one, do I have anything new to say to this? I love this book. It is a true crime, also superhero book. And the extra gimmick on top of it is that some of these characters, the reporters that are following the actions of the overall story here, also have a podcast, a true crime podcast with, look at, like, the cast these days: Rachel Lee Cook, Patton Oswalt, Todd Stashwick, Lauren Lester, Yuri Lowenthal. It's so well produced. It's so good. You always get, like, a QR code, or could go to this website, and you've got a true crime podcast that adds to the background of the story. It's a murder mystery. There's been a serial killer. In this one, the guy who confessed to being the serial killer recants his confession, and it turns out there was never really any physical evidence. So the police are back to square one in a case they thought they'd almost wrapped up. It's very embarrassing for them. I'm trying to figure out who the killer is at this point, because we're in issue 5. Not the killer. What I'm really trying to figure out is who is No One. No One is a maskless vigilante that shows up from time to time in this story that the police are hunting down. It's definitely somebody, like, in what's called the Kern family, because here fortunately, because there's a bunch of characters, they give you, like, a cast list at the back of every issue. Ben Kern was the assistant chief of police. One of his sons is this guy, Aaron Kern, who was the guy who was arrested as a serial killer, but he's recanted his confession now. Any of these people could be No One. I could be wrong, but I'm leaning towards thinking that it's this older guy, Ben Kern. He just sort of seems to have a sense of justice that's really deeply ingrained, and somehow the whole family's involved. I don't know. It's a good mystery is all I can say. It's a good mystery. Oh, nice. Look at this. My favorite comic. That's nice. Loving No One. The hallway fight in this issue was epic. Yeah, there's a great fight scene. No One himself isn't always a huge part of the issue, but in this one, like, a security force, just has him in a tight hallway, guns drawn on him, but he's able to blind them, like, duck low and get in real fast and just beat the hell out of them. It's a pretty good fight scene. I won't show it all. I like it. But I'd be curious to see what other people's guesses for the who's behind the vigilante as well as who's behind the serial killings is. It's a dual mystery. It's a dual mystery. It's really cool. I don't have a whole lot to say about the rest of the stuff I read this week. Yeah, I don't know if I really have anything worthy of saying to these. Dead Lucky, I think I might be dropping. It's not bad. I just not as into it. Christopher Chaos, I do like. I don't have a lot to say about this one either. Do I have anything to say about anything here? Newburn is good. I recommend it. I just don't have a lot to say this week. I think Alejandro is no one. Let me jump back and remind myself who Alejandro was. Sorry. Oh, the crime reporter. Maybe. I mean, definitely sort of like floating under the radar. So, could be. But as far as good crime comics go, certainly Newburn does something different. Chip Zdarsky, solid writer these days. Jacob Phillips, I think, already making a name for himself and should have a long, long career. I think does stuff like That Texas Blood, The Enfield Massacre, and this book. Definitely a bit reminiscent of his father, Sean Phillips, in the books that he does with Ed Brubaker. But Newburn is it's interesting. It follows like, two main characters. And the main guy, Newburn, used to be a police officer. Now he works for all of the crime families, not just one of them, but all of them, so that they can like keep tabs on each other and avoid costly gang wars. But they're always about to go after them, after him. They'd love to get rid of him, but he kind of keeps proving his worth. Wait, I just saw something. Hold on. I just got into Donny Cates recently. Donny Cates has a lot of good stuff. Not a hidden gem by any means, but a gem I was missing. I liked his Venom run. I think that some of his early creator-owned stuff is really cool. Ghost Fleet has art by Daniel Warren Johnson on a book he wrote, so that's kind of an underrated book. Kind of flew under the radar at the time. Yeah, Donny has some really good ideas. Seeing quite a bit of 9-panel grids between Newburn and No One. Is that standard for crime mystery at this point? I think that, like in crime, Mike, you probably do want to pace things a certain way. Well, there's a backup story. I think to a degree it's pacing as well as sometimes keeping you at arm's reach. Like not tons of close-ups, not tons of action scenes that are like dominating a page. It's more about the plot mechanisms. So there could be like a rationale there. Interesting idea. I am enjoying this. This is the second issue of Ninja Turtles Stranger Things. It's very much going to not be explicitly something that either of their continuity, like we're never going to see season 5 of Stranger Things going, hey, remember when we hung out with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? That's not going to happen. We're not going to probably get a future IDW Turtles book where they were like, remember when we were friends with the Stranger Things kids back in the 80s before we were currently born? Neither of those things is going to happen. But this is kind of fun. It gets the characters' personalities right. It's cool to see the Ninja Turtles all drawn with like the red headbands and sort of drawn in the style that they were drawn back in the 80s, which is like when this story is set. And it's fun to see them go up against things like Demogorgons. I also like how they've, put together things like Eleven and her history with like getting experimented on with the Turtles' Baxter Stockman mad scientist and have that be related in some way. It's not something that's going to like have like lots of lasting resonance, but it is fun and it moves at a good pace. The art is like, it's not a literal likeness of these characters. And at the same time, I can always tell who's who, and it's written well, like in their voices. So I do like that. I like that. The Turtles mostly do stomp the Stranger Things monsters, but there's a lot of them. And it's a good threat in that, like, somehow somebody is bringing the the Upside Down, they've opened a portal on a subway train, and they're just like having that go all the way around New York and releasing Demogorgons and stuff throughout New York, as well as Mouser Demogorgons. So that's kind of it's interesting. It's interesting. And the last book I'll talk about briefly is just like, I think I'm done with Firepower. I love Robert in a lot of ways, but this book just isn't resonating with me enough. It just sort of feels like a main character that's sort of Iron Fist, but he's also like, he's got like 2 kids and a wife, and I can understand like they feel kind of real, but I don't feel there's enough conflict with them. Everybody loves each other. Everybody like is able to level up pretty easily. I feel like I don't feel like they necessarily have to put in that much work to master their kung fu abilities. I know that they don't all have abilities from day one, and we're like 2 years into the run. This is issue 26, but I just don't feel that like, you know, they needed to have it before. And now that they do, like, it just doesn't feel like it's taking enough work. I don't feel there's enough conflict or enough humor. So I think I'm done with Firepower. The art is fantastic. The art is fantastic. And your mileage may vary. Your mileage may vary. You may love what Robert's doing. I like Robert a lot, but this one isn't working for me anymore. So I think I'm going to drop that. I think that will probably do it for this episode. But unless any of you guys have any big thoughts on stuff that I'm missing that is coming out these days as comics, are there any that are that came out this past week specifically that you loved that you think I'm missing out on? Always curious to hear other recommendations. And don't worry about me. I'm just sort of doing some hatching while I wait to see what kind of questions get asked. Looks nice. Hold on. Your drawing is turning out awesome. That's nice. I inked this a couple episodes ago, and then I just haven't had time to sit down. Maybe I'll do it for just a little bit here. Rogue Sun this week was amazing. If you're not reading it, you're missing out. That's one I've got to catch up, I think, in trade paperback. I read the first issue and then like dropped it, and I think I do regret it. Mentioned Donny Cates. I also had eyes on Once in Future. Yeah, Once in Future is well written. Yep. It's definitely worth picking up. Really, really good. Have you heard about the new Nemesis the Warlock reprints? No, but that's a great British comic. Let's see. Matt Lesniewski's Faceless and the Family just shipped from Zoop. Oh, okay. That was a crowdfunding campaign then. Yes. Okay. Nice. I've been reading Battle Chasers and have been enjoying it. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that it inspired Jack and Dexter. Did it really? Battle Chasers inspired Jack and Dexter because Jack and Dexter was like basically what started to make Naughty Dog. And of course, like I love them now for the Uncharted and what was the better one? The Last of Us. Oh my God, Naughty Dog went on to create such amazing things. Oh yeah, we could mention that briefly. Yeah, sadly, Arlene Sorkin passed away. Not just the voice of Harley Quinn initially, really the inspiration for that character. Arlene Sorkin was a friend of Batman the Animated Series, Paul Dini. And one day, Arlene Sorkin sent him a video of some of her recent acting work, like sort of a reel, just say like, hey, this is what I'm up to, which included her work as a Harlequin clown on Days of Our Lives, that she sort of gave a Brooklyn accent with like a little bit of a Yiddish take mixed in. And he kept that in the back of his mind. And one day, like when they were creating like Batman the Animated Series, they were like, let's give a foil to Joker, sort of like a love interest / interesting hench person. And it was just going to be one episode. and they hired Arlene, and then they were like, this is just too good a character. And I think like Harley Quinn has to be one of the most indelible characters of the last 30 years, like she's gone on to be so popular. So yeah, Arlene Sorkin passed away a couple days ago. But certainly a really important character. And Arlene didn't just voice her, she really helped create that character and made her memorable. So yeah. Akira Toriyama's Sandland has a new Viz reprint that was a cool discovery for me. Sure, Dragon Ball creator Akira Toriyama. Yeah, sorry to sort of share some of the news. Looks like not everybody had heard, but yeah. Would you want to see The Last Ronin R-rated movie? I don't think it would need to be R-rated, honestly. I don't think the comic was quite R-rated. I think, PG-13 would be enough to tell that story accurately, to be honest. Thanks for stopping by. Glad that you liked it. She was married to Christopher Lloyd? That I don't remember. Wow. Okay. I have family members with MS. Yeah. It's different for everybody. Sort of, yeah. Harleen Quinzel. Arlene. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Right. Christopher Lloyd, the TV producer, then? Is that who we're talking about? That's it. Good. Okay. That makes a little more sense. Thank you. I was like, I don't remember anything like that. Well, thanks for sharing some of the things you all are reading. Always looking for a good recommendation. That's always fun. I think I need to get a different pen. This one's dying a little bit. So that's what I'll do. Yes, the Christopher Lloyd that produced Frasier. Hey, baby, I hear them blues are calling. Tossed salads and scrambled eggs. Mercy. Is that perfect? I think that was perfect. Let's see. I'm hoping Immortal Thor will be my new comic obsession. It seems like it's really good. I recommend it. I recommend giving it a shot. All right, gonna open some new pens here. Put this one aside so that I don't use it. And I want this one. Spot on. Perfection. You guys. Spot on. I would just say that I dabble in everything related to comics so that I can understand them better. I've, just like self-produced wise, like I've written. I write a lot just for fun. I draw for fun. I pencil, I ink, I've colored, I've lettered, I've edited, I've proofread, I've printed. I've tried to just sort of mess around with all of it just so that I can really appreciate each level of comic book making. I find it really interesting. Yeah, I love comics. I think that they're just so dynamic and versatile, interesting. Just a medium I really, really love. I really, really love it. And so, yeah. I would not call myself any sort of a professional. I've had a few printed things, but I do love comics, and I'll always be messing around with them somewhere, somehow. That's just who I is. I also sing. Chris lettered the Latorre graphic novel that I wrote. Hey, that's true. I did. Yeah, I really like that book. And if you guys are curious, you can order Latorre on Marcosia. They were the publisher of it. They have links to all sorts of different places where you can do it. Looks like the video is starting to glitch a little. There might be a reason for that. I'm using my iPhone as this, and I don't have it physically plugged in. It's just streaming. Now that it's been a little over 2 hours, it may just sort of need a little bit of a break, I'm thinking. So we're probably about to wrap up. We're probably about to wrap up. But I hope we had some interesting news and reviews for you. I think that the pick of the week has to be Immortal Thor. That one surprised me pleasantly the most, even though I have liked many things by the writer. I was just really impressed with how this one came out. And I hope you'll give it a shot. I think it's pretty nice. Mr. Humble over here didn't even mention being nominated for an Eisner. Technically, as part of a group, but yes. Yes, a book I drew a story for, an anthology called Trickster, was nominated for an Eisner once. That's true. That's true. So, everybody that worked on it was sort of it lumped in there. The book was nominated for an Eisner. That was back in 2011, though, so that was a long time ago now. It's fun to mention every once in a while to just sort of surprise people that are like, what? I'm like, you know what? So when people say, this guy is shouting off his opinions, he doesn't know anything. And I'm like, okay, that's fair. But did you do a comic that was nominated for an Eisner? Because I did. So I'm not nothing. And I'll be honest, if I could ever carve out just a little bit more time, boy, do I have some stories I would really, really love to, that I've written that I would love to turn into comics. Maybe someday. We'll see. We'll see. I just don't have a lot of time. So I'd definitely be hiring an artist. I am too slow. I am way too slow. But maybe someday. Maybe someday. We shall see. No, the cats definitely did not make cameos. Yeah. You liked Immortal Thor, then you'll love Perpetual Paste Pop Pete. He really sticks around. Thank you. Thank you. When's my autobiography coming out? So I probably would never have an autobiography, with the small exception of course, I did patrol Seattle for a year with Phoenix Jones in a bulletproof outfit, getting into some fights, administering first aid, finding lost people, chasing people down that had stolen stuff. So I do sometimes think maybe I should turn that into an actual true life, my superhero year, a 1 year period of trying my hand at being a superhero and what that was actually like and how silly and crazy it was. And it's a miracle that I wasn't killed, to be honest. It's just a miracle. But did got into a few adventures, got into a few little adventures for certain nights. Yeah, it was weird. Let's see. Immortal Peace Pie. I did not wear tights, just to be clear. I did not wear tights. The main part of my costume was essentially I had a bulletproof vest on because we legit did come across people that would sometimes pull knives and guns and stuff. And then a motorcycle jacket with armored plating. I thought that looked kind of cool, and a mask. Yeah, anyway. Missed opportunity, maybe. It was an interesting year. So someday I might tell that story, and I would use fake names for everybody else involved. I'm not out to sort of dox people or tell their story. I'm out to tell my part of the story. And why trying to be a superhero doesn't really work in the real world, even if you want it to. It doesn't really work. Would be cool if it did, but it does not. In my opinion. Maybe someday somebody out there will like prove me wrong, but after doing what I did, I don't think so. I don't think so. But I tried it. It was interesting. It was an interesting time. And like while I was doing that, would end up on like the radio and the news and stuff like that for like interviews and reports, and met all sorts of interesting people. That's for sure. Anyway. Feels sort of like I'm bragging when I talk about that, and I want to make it clear I am not. I don't think ultimately that it was a good idea. I think that I did some good, but I don't think that that was the right way to do it. And I'm kind of disappointed with where Phoenix Jones went after I sort of, we'll call it, retired. I'm disappointed in him. But it was an interesting time. Let's see. I did wear a jock, yes, just in case anybody ever kicked. I actually did, and I don't think anybody else did. But yeah, I definitely wore one, just in case. But yeah, I'm getting a little like cramped up in my back after like sitting down to do the show for this long, so I think I'm about to call it. My wife and I are going to take a little break late tonight. We're going to go out and see we're going to go see that movie Barbie, which I know has been out forever, but people keep saying that it's worth seeing, so we're going to give it a shot tonight, like late tonight, and see what we learn about it. I hope it's good. Yep, didn't quite finish this, did I? But I'm going to give it a few more touches here, just like a few areas that are bothering me that really feel like they need to be finished inking, and then we'll call it a night. All as a team, okay? We'll call it as a team. But bottom line, I don't recommend running around in a costume. It's probably attracting not always the best attention. It attracts some attention of people that are amused. And there's always going to be some young kids that think it sounds like a great idea. And I started to worry about that. I started to worry about like people that were thinking like, I'm going to do that. And I was like, wait, that is not at all what I want to happen, because that could lead to some people getting seriously hurt. Phoenix had some pretty good rules of like, people that like were on the team had to either have like martial arts training or police or military training. They had to like wear bulletproof vest if we went out. Like those were good rules, but we were probably potentially inspiring people to try this elsewhere, and they would not necessarily conform to the same rules. And I was like, I would be kind of responsible for inspiring or influencing people. And I didn't ultimately think that that was a very good idea. Not that you're always responsible for other people, but to a degree you are, to a degree. Let's see. Don't sell yourself short. I commend you for that effort. It also makes your take on comics even more interesting in a weird way. And Barbie was good. Okay, I'm looking forward to trying that. No, I would say that like my wife respects comics and is mildly interested in some of it. She's an artist. She paints, she sculpts, she's a musician. So she respects it, but she does not like read comics like I do. She doesn't really feel compelled to see all of the superhero movies, but she will sometimes. Sometimes she gets interested and we can share that together. Lately, she's actually into the One Piece anime. We just started watching it together, so we'll see. We'll see. I tried being a costume crusader, living over a cave and having billions of dollars helped. Yeah, the billions of dollars would help. That's true. I do have one video I made talking about it with a few behind-the-scenes videos of that time. Anyway. Bring back the burger painting. Did I have a burger painting in the background at one point? I don't quite remember. Let's see. I also just learned about Bucks County Batman. I've heard of this. Yes, not quite the same, but still very interesting. Thank you, Larry. Really appreciate the super chats. That's really, really that's nice. That's nice. People would love my year as a real life superhero. I thank you. Thank you for saying so. I think so too. And the real trick would just be like finding an artist that I was really in love with and paying them like a really good rate, because that's important to me. That's important to me. We'll see. We'll see. I've got like that, my superhero year that I'd like to tell. I also have a werewolf story that I made like specifically to be a comic that I think I'd like to tell. But as to when I would be able to, I don't know. I guess there's not a whole lot holding me back other than finding the right artist that I'm really, really in love with and have the money to pay them what I think that they're worth. Because I want to be fair. I want to be fair. We'll see. There's some potential stuff that would happen. And, I think I've got one of the best audiences in comics. I think that, we've all helped cultivate a very well-educated and well-rounded group of people that have a lot of respect for comics as a storytelling medium, and have a lot of knowledge about comic book history and techniques. And I love you guys for it. So I feel like I would get plenty of support if I put it out. I really do feel that from you guys. And I thank you. So it probably will happen at some point. And I feel like I sort of made a quiet vow to myself once when a friend of mine named Jeremy Dale passed away at a very young age. And he was a professional comics artist. And I always was like, boy, I just feel like I'm still here. So I owe it to Jeremy to try, because he's not here and I am, and I miss him. So we'll see. So I feel literally guilty when I realize that I've gotten too busy with other things in life. And I'm like, no excuses. Like, let's get this done. So it'll happen. It'll happen. I don't know when, but hopefully soon. Hopefully soon. All right. I think I'm going to take off. Let's see. Yourself, Cartoonist Kayfabe, and Comic Pop are my regular watches in the medium. You're doing something special. Thanks, Samuel. That's nice of you. I like those two guys too. I don't always get time to watch a lot of comic tubers, very little, but I respect those guys a lot, and I've seen a few things by them, and I do respect them. Let's see. Anyway, thank you very much, everybody, for joining me. I'm going to take that off, and I think that'll do it for tonight. Hopefully the spooky purple background didn't keep too many people away. What did we do? We did 2.5 hours. That's plenty of time for a podcast. I will have the next comic tropes up before the next weekend. I'm positive of that, because I'm really far along in editing. I do still have a lot of work to do. So I think that's what I'll do. I'm gonna call this stream. I'm gonna take a break to have some dinner. Go back to editing for a while before I head out to the movies tonight. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining me. It was a pleasure. And then, like, as far as like good comics that are out there, I think that Newburn is good. I think that No One is very good. I think Christopher Chaos is interesting. But the one that I really was impressed with this week, my pick of the week, would be the Immortal Thor. I think that's special. Thanks, everybody. Keep reading comics. No, double salute. You earned it. Take care.